Hello there, Ramblers, and welcome to a rather peachy episode of Rees Rambles, my weekly podcast all about the latest comings and goings, movings and shakings, and indeed, all the rest of it in the worlds of vintage and retro computing, gaming, and technology. I hope you're all doing well out there. And rather than starting with the weather like I usually would, and to be honest, the weather isn't really doing much here in the UK at the moment. It's kind of warmish, kind of sunnyish, and, as nice as it is after all the horrible dark and wet winter months that we've had, it's pretty sameish. So I'm not going to go into too much detail about that, but I do want to talk about last Friday because I was supposed to be here in the studio first thing bright and early in the morning to record last week's Ramble. And as you probably noticed, I wasn't because there was no Ramble last week. So apologies for that. That was unplanned on my part. And the reason I wanted to get here first thing in the morning is because myself and a group of friends were actually going out in the evening and we had to leave the house at about 5 o'clock-ish. So the plan was to get it all done, wrapped up, edited and uploaded well before that. But unfortunately, some work commitments came up in the morning. I ended up only having a couple of hours here in the studio in the afternoon. So I decided to crack on with my PS3 video, which is still very much ongoing and still very much of a rabbit hole for someone like me who knows absolutely nothing about this console and wants to, represent it fairly and accurately and all the cool stuff that you can do with the PS3. In 2026. So hopefully that's not too far off. I know I keep saying that, and I know I have kind of lagged a little bit with my main channel videos and stuff, but there's all sorts of things going on, which, I don't know, I might put a video out talking about that. But Friday evening, we left the house at 5 o'clock and we drove into Birmingham and we went to see the comedian Peter Kay, who you may be familiar with. His work on stuff like Phoenix Nights and Max and Paddy and stuff like that. Much, much loved British institution and a national treasure, I think. And I think I'll probably start by saying that I never really got into Peter Kay back in the day. You know, I didn't really kind of get his brand of humour. But a friend of mine is a huge fan. He's a Peter Kay super fan. So we decided to buy him some tickets for Christmas. And the show finally came around. And what an eventful show it was. Let me show you this. This is the BBC News website. Man charged after bomb hoax at Peter Kay show. I was at this show, so we were sat up pretty high up to the side of the stage. We're actually quite close to the stage. And we were watching the show. And, he was doing his usual thing, singing his 80s TV theme tunes and advertising jingles and that kind of thing. Telling some rather off-colour but, rather cheekily presented jokes, which I thought were quite brave, actually. And I was actually really enjoying it. Like I say, I never really got into Peter Kay in a big way, but he was absolutely hilarious and he was on fine form and it was a brilliant, brilliant show. Until we got to the 45-minute mark. And as you can see, well, let's just read a little bit about this just before we get into our vintage and retro computing headlines for the week. A 19-year-old man has been charged over a bomb hoax that led to the evacuation of a show by comedian Peter Kay in Birmingham. Omar Majed of Washwood Heath, Birmingham, has been charged with false communications and will appear before magistrates in the city on Monday, West Midlands Police said. The Utilita Arena was evacuated and the comedian rushed off stage during the show on Friday night following a report of a suspicious bag being left in the area. Police said following searches, nothing suspicious was found. And indeed, he was doing his jokes and stuff and he was very much kind of getting into the flow of things and, in that way that stand-up comedians do with these big arena shows. And he started to talk about the upcoming intermission. Obviously, I guess the show was kind of split into two parts. And he was talking about how the intermission was coming soon, and we could get to the bar and get to the toilets and stuff. And then two security guards dressed entirely in black came onto the stage, and one of them actually said something into his ear, and kind of took him under his arm and whisked him off the stage. And the other security guard picked up a microphone and started talking and addressing the audience. But unfortunately, that microphone wasn't working for whatever reason, because it wasn't enabled or whatever. And people thought that it was part of the act. And people were laughing and joking and kind of heckling this guy. And, there was people chanting, "We can't hear you," and stuff like that. And then he picked up another microphone. And he said, unfortunately, the show is going to have to be stopped and we're going to have to ask you to leave the arena. Please follow the instructions of the arena staff. Thank you very much for coming, kind of thing. And then walked off the stage. And there was it felt like a few minutes. It was probably only about, sort of 20, 30 seconds where everyone in the audience just kind of sat around looking at each other thinking, well, is this a joke? Is this part of the show? Is he going to come back on? And what on earth is going on? And then all the lights came up, and the staff kind of started ushering people out, and we were told absolutely nothing. I mean, we were parked in the actual main arena car park, and it took us quite a while to get out because of all the people obviously trying to leave at exactly the same time. And it was only when we actually kind of got out of the arena and there were police cars absolutely everywhere, blue flashing lights and stuff, it was like, oh, there's actually something quite serious going on. And we drove home very, very confused. It was like, well, maybe it was a joke. Maybe we've just left this. Maybe everyone's just left the show for no reason. And, frantically checking social media and stuff all the way back, started to see a couple of mentions and things on Twitter of how the show had been evacuated, but no information whatsoever. And it was only the next morning that the headlines kind of started to appear about this bomb hoax thing. And apparently a guy had run in off the street and barged his way through security into the toilets and left a bag in there. Basically caused the whole building to be evacuated. I think that's what people were saying at the time. I still don't think it's entirely clear based on the stories, but yeah, quite exciting to be caught up in all of that. Of course, a bit disappointing at the time. Obviously, very much enjoying the show, and it got cut short. But I have since heard, I did get an email yesterday that it has been rescheduled. So there you go. That's my story about going to see Peter Kay, getting to see less than half the show and getting caught up in a bomb scare, which I think follows on rather neatly from my story last week about the bomb scare at VCF over in America. This kind of thing just doesn't happen here in the UK. So very, very interesting experience. And I must say, credit to all of the people involved, all of the people in the audience and the staff and stuff. It was very calm. It was very collected. More people just a bit confused and a bit put out, kind of looking at each other like, oh, and guess we'll just go home then. So there you go. It is what it is. Let's get on with the stories for this week. But first, of course, let's give a very quick shout out to our good friends at PCBWay.com, who, of course, sponsor both Reese Rambles and my main channel, ctrl-alt-rees, if you can remember that. Now, PCBWay.com have been in the business of PCB fabrication for over 11 years now, and have built up quite the reputation in this community for their excellent customer service, their high quality, and their very fast turnaround times. And they have asked me to let you know that they are also offering some additional services these days. Services which include things like CNC machining, injection molding, sheet metal fabrication, and 3D printing. So they are indeed a one-stop shop for all of your fabrication requirements. And if that sounds like the kind of thing that you need for your next project, please do check out the link to PCBWay.com down in the description. And once more, big thank you to PCBWay for all of your support. So let's get this show on the road, and what better to kick us off than revisiting a story that I talked about a couple of months back, and that was when this was very first announced, and it is very rapidly approaching, so I wanted to give you a bit of a reminder of this. This is an event that is being put on by some very good friends of mine in the retro and vintage computing community. No, they are not paying me to tell you about this. I just really want to see it succeed because it looks like it's going to be a fantastic event and it is being put on by some fantastic people. There we go. Let's get my words out, Reese. And this is the UK Amstrad group and their very first meetup, which is happening in Surrey, rather lovely part of the country. So if you are local to that, or indeed fancy travelling down to partake in some Amstrad action, see what I did there? Then you will be more than welcome. It's Sunday, the 21st of June, 2026, which of course is only about 5 or 6 weeks away as at the time of recording. So do stick it in your diary. And we will just revisit this page because they have actually made some announcements as to some guests and things that they are going to be featuring. And they've got some rather cool stuff going on. So this is UKAG, the UK Amstrad Group, as previously mentioned. UKAG's first official meet, and it takes place on Sunday, the 21st of June, 2026. Doors open at 9 a.m. and close at 8 p.m, or indeed sooner if everyone decides to go to the pub, which, having been to a few computing events in the UK, is very, very much a very common occurrence. And although I'm not familiar with Ottershaw in Surrey, it looks like the kind of place that will have some rather nice village pubs. So, Ottershaw Village Hall, Brox Road in Surrey, as mentioned, at 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. It's £20 per person, but that does include a day's worth of tea, coffee, and snacks. And knowing these people, I bet they do some good snacks. You'll probably get some custard creams and maybe even a Bakewell tart. Don't know, just throwing it out there. Technic, I know you're involved. Maybe make it happen. A lot of information here about parking, which I did talk about last time. And as someone who is quite anxious about parking situations at the events that I attend, I very much appreciated this as well. Not saying I am going to attend this event. I think I'm away this weekend, but if I'm not, maybe I'll try to pop down. Anyway, but if we scroll past this, this is outside the London ULEZ zone. So if you're into your classic cars as well as your classic computers, have no fear. You can drive your old banger to the venue and not be hit with any of that emissions charging stuff. So, also good public transport links as well. There's a Chertsey train station and, some information on there. Anyway, yes, you are more than welcome to bring your computers, your monitors, your joysticks, and other bits and pieces, of course. You can get a table ticket, and then you will actually have your own table at the show and exhibit whatever you like, which is great. And as mentioned, we do have a list of stuff that's happening on the day now. So it's an all-day user group meetup. It's a chance for us to do all things Amstrad, fix them, play games, show how to use different pieces of software and hardware, use them, show them off, talk about them, whatever you want to do. There is a gaming contest. They have not announced what game it's going to be, but there will be a high score challenge or indeed a multi-round kind of knockout type situation with a trophy for the winner. So that's quite exciting. Also, a Machine of the Meet award if you are taking your Amstrad down to show off. And this will be awarded to the most interesting, unusual, creative, or otherwise different Amstrad. And indeed, there will be a trophy available for that as well. Wonderful stuff. And perhaps most importantly, they have got some guest speakers announced. And those guest speakers include Roland Perry, of course, Amstrad legend, their honorary president, and one of the people responsible for the Amstrad CPC, PCW, and many other Amstrad computers. And indeed, Roland will be giving a talk as well. So that's quite the scoop, particularly as it is their very first show. So, the news is, if you want to bring any bits that you want to sell to other attendees, there will be a bring and buy type arrangement as well. Or, I guess if you want to buy anything, you can also show up. And there's some information here on the venue and all sorts of other information, about the day. So I urge you to go and visit their website, ucag.org.uk. I will link that down below in the description, or indeed in the show notes if you're listening to this on your podcast platform of choice. Just want to wish these guys the best for the event. I know they've put a huge amount of work into this, and it is shaping up to be a really cool meetup for Amstrad users, which I do think are kind of somewhat represented in the show calendar in the UK. So it'll be nice to see a dedicated Amstrad user group show. And hopefully this will be the first of many. And it would appear at first glance that we are proceeding in alphabetical order for our next story, because we are going from Amstrad to, if you guessed Apple, there is an Apple connection to this story, if not a very tenuous one. But no, Atari, of course. I am a lifelong Atari fan and have been somewhat of a cheerleader for their current ownership, their current CEO, Wade Rosen, who has actually made a series of very, very smart acquisitions and actually managed them rather well, which is quite interesting. That is what this next story is about. But of course, just to refresh your memory, Digital Eclipse, who did the Atari 50th anniversary experience and do all sorts of game interactive experiences and games and stuff like that, were acquired by Atari, and they haven't messed that one up yet. They've acquired Night Dive Studios, who do all of those absolutely fantastic first-person shooter remasters. And on that note, I have been playing Heretic again. Found myself dipping back into that the other night and enjoying it very much. And yeah, they are continuing to churn out stuff under Night Dive Studios and haven't messed that one up either. And of course, on the hardware side of things, Atari has done stuff like the Atari Plus platform, the 2600 Plus, the 7800 Plus, working very closely with PlayOn, my good friends at PlayOn, to bring back those iconic consoles. And again, they've actually been surprisingly good. So hopefully this next acquisition will also turn out to be a good one. Now, I mentioned there was an Apple connection, and that is because this is a series of games that actually started on an Apple platform. And there's also a bit of an interesting twist to this one. So quite an interesting story all around. Anyway, without further ado, let's start by talking about this series and what it is. So this is Wizardry, which started in 1981 with a game called Wizardry Proving Grounds of the Mad Overlord, which was released for the Apple II. as of course many of those iconic US-based games were at the time. But it was also ported to many other platforms as well. Although I don't see Amstrad in the list here, ironically enough. So we've got the Apple II, Commodore 64, we've got the Game Boy Color, the Mac, the MSX, and all sorts of other platforms here. And it's even been released on the Nintendo Switch. And this has been a very long-running series of games. The reason I am consulting Wikipedia here, by the way, is because I'm not actually familiar with Wizardry. I know, obviously I'd heard the name, and I'm vaguely familiar with the concept, that it is one of those kind of much known and loved old-school RPGs, but that was pretty much it. So I had to do a bit of reading on this and refresh my memory. But quite a few games in the series over the years, and indeed Atari has announced this week that it has acquired the rights to the Wizardry series and will be releasing new games and things, and obviously I guess the inevitable re-releases. But there has been a bit of an interesting twist in this tale. So this is the original announcement. This is just a post by Wario64 over on Blue Sky, which is where I happen to be pointed towards this. But Atari acquires rights to the legendary Wizardry RPGs. And this is New York Business Wire. Atari, one of the world's most iconic consumer brands and interactive entertainment producers, announced today the acquisition of the complete and exclusive rights to the first 5 Wizardry games and their underlying IP. The first 5 games being the important point here, because there has been some confusion. The 5 games included are Wizardry Proving Grounds of the Mad Overlord from 1981, Wizardry 2, The Knight of Diamonds from 1982, which I believe is kind of one of the most well-loved entries in the series, Wizardry 3, Legacy of Lilgamim, 1983. I think I'm saying that right. Wizardry 4, The Return of Werdner, 1987, and Wizardry 5, Heart of the Maelstrom, 1988. Highly influential IP, often referred to as the original Wizardry, and why did they put that word in there again? The Lilgamin saga set the cornerstone for the Japanese RPG genre. The acquisition also includes many other Wizardry-related video games, contract rights, and other related intellectual property. The original Wizardry NES, SNES, and PC games, as well as the underlying IP, including spells, characters, places, and monsters from the original Wizardry universe, have been unavailable to developers and fans for more than 25 years. Atari is excited to bring these genre-defining games back to market through expanded digital and physical distribution and the creation of remasters, collections, and new releases. In addition, game publishing will be complemented by the release of merchandise, card and board games, books and comics, and TV and film projects as part of a long-term plan to build an entertainment franchise based on the original Wizardry games. And then we have a quote here from the original creators of those games back in the day, which of course you can go and read if you want to go and read this this press release. Exciting stuff. It does mention a little bit further down here, actually, the Wizardry titles 6, 7, and 8 are owned by the Japanese publishing company Dreecom and are based on a different fictional universe. So that is quite important because they have actually jumped in and just clarified that Atari hasn't purchased the complete rights to the entire name and series and IP and everything outright, because they do actually have a stake in that. So just adding to the confusion this week, there is a story over on Rock Paper Shotgun, which came out the day after that press release, and this is Dreecom's take on this. I'm going with Dreecom rather than Dracom or whatever. Pronunciation is not my strong point, as you know. Who owns the Wizardry RPGs? We do, say both Dreecom and Atari, as an unusual IP acquisition splits custody of the genre-forming series, writes Rock Paper Shotgun. Atari's new deal promises re-releases, remakes, and multimedia spin-offs. It'd be interesting to see like a movie or a series based on a classic RPG game, wouldn't it? It'd be quite interesting. Anyway, this story reports. I'm not going to read the entire story, but there is a quote here from a Dreecom spokesperson. Some media outlets have reported that Atari SA, hereinafter Atari, has acquired rights related to the IP Wizardry, for which our company holds trademark rights domestically and internationally. From Dream Communications, hereinafter our company, however, no such fact exists. Our company has no intention of selling the trademark rights or other rights to Wizardry that we hold in the future. Our company has previously released notification from Atari that Atari acquired the rights to the 1st through 5th titles of the Wizardry series from the original rights holder. Our company will continue to hold the domestic and international trademark rights to the Wizardry series and will continue to manage the Wizardry IP brand. mysterious. And Atari have responded with, and this is the full quote, Atari have acquired the rights to the first 5 games. So, my take on this, based on, obviously the original press release mentioned stuff like new releases in the series, things like TV spin-offs and movies and stuff like that, and how they'd actually acquired the IP rights to the Wizardry name. It seems that's actually not the case, and that press release was perhaps a bit too all-encompassing when it shouldn't have been, when actually all Atari has acquired is the rights to the first 5 games. So we'll be seeing remasters of those, maybe something to do with Night Dive Studios, maybe on their Kex engine, something like that. That was a really stupid assumption, wasn't it? Because they weren't actually 3D first-person games. No, scrap that. We will hopefully be seeing remasters and re-releases of those somehow under the Atari banner, whether that's going to involve Digital Eclipse or their emulation technology, maybe something like a Wizardry collection, perhaps presented as one of Digital Eclipse's releases in that way. Or indeed maybe something involving Night Dive. I don't really know. But the movie spin-offs, TV spin-offs, magazines, comics, that kind of thing, using the Wizardry name, seems they don't actually own the trademark to Wizardry itself. And that's actually owned by Dreecom in Japan. So, be interesting to see how this turns out. Like I say, I'm going to have to go out and learn a bit more about Wizardry and what it's all about. But interesting stuff. Very interesting stuff for fans of that series. A rather exciting development in the FPGA world next, and specifically, of course, MiSTer. I love MiSTer. I was one of the very first lucky recipients of the original MiSTer MultiSystem from HEBA. And indeed, this is a multi-system related announcement. So I just want to go into this, making it very, very clear that I do have a personal connection to these people. Neil is kind of a good friend of mine in the YouTubing world. I've worked with him on a few things. I've been to his museum many, many a time. I've been a patron of his since the very early days. And it has been fantastic to see the Retro Collective grow into what it is today. Fantastic team of people involved. We've got Holly, we've got Dan, we've got Richard, we've got, all the rest of them. And they are putting out consistently high-quality hardware. I still use my original multi-system. It gets fired up on a very regular basis. At the moment, I have been playing through some original PlayStation games on that. And they've announced a new one, which is actually of great interest to me, because this is something that's something I've been wanting to do for the longest time. And that is to stick my MiSTer in an arcade machine. Now, if you're not familiar with MiSTer, just a very quick introduction. Of course, it uses this Cyclone 5 FPGA chip from Intel. The FPGA being a field programmable gate array, which is a reprogrammable chip that basically allows it to recreate the logic of pretty much any other chip or collection of chips that you might imagine at a very low hardware level. So you can use it to run original software and games from all sorts of platforms, going all the way back to the original Pong machines up to and including stuff like the Sega Saturn and the N64 and that kind of era of consoles. And the most accurate way, I would say, to enjoy those original games outside of the original hardware. Really great community support around it. Of course, it is an open platform, and there are all sorts of things going on in the MiSTer world that all kind of support and complement each other. So do shop around. This isn't the first arcade solution, but it is a very neat one, as you might expect from HEBA. And it's also entirely designed in Britain, in the UK. So they are a British company, and if you want to support British industry, you could do far worse than to get your hands on one of these things. So anyway, what is it? Well, there is a video here. This is a 20-minute long video using the new format from the Retro Collective in their wonderful new filming space. I haven't actually had a chance to pop down and check this place out yet, so I will have to go and do a bit of a road trip and perhaps get some footage of this. But we've got Neil and Richard here talking about the Multi-System 2 arcade. So what this does is it takes the MiSTer platform, which of course supports absolutely loads of original arcade games, and again at a very kind of authentic low-level hardware level as well. So perhaps the most authentic way to enjoy these original arcade games. Stuff from the earliest kind of most primitive arcade games all the way up to some kind of early kind of mid-90s 3D type stuff. And I actually have my arcade cab, which I've been meaning to restore for the longest time. I've got it sat in the next office over there, and I'm just going to stick a MiSTer system in it now. I used to have a PC in it, That actually ended up being my NAS that I use here in the studio for backing up all of my games and things on, and all my videos and stuff like that. But yeah, I think I'm just going to stick one of these in here. But this is of particular interest to people who have JAMMA-based arcade cabinets. Of course, perhaps not like my old electro coin British cabinet that I've got here, which of course was very much cobbled together back in the day. But stuff like these Japanese candy cabs and perhaps some of the later and better built British cabinets use this standard called JAMMA, which is the Japanese Arcade Manufacturer something or other association, something like that. And it is a standard system that made those original arcade boards interchangeable between different arcade cabinets. So there was like an edge connector on the board, and the pinout of that connector is standardized. So you'd have a red, green, and blue video. You'd have joystick left, joystick right, joystick up and down. You'd have button 1, 2, 3, 4, all on a standardized pinout on that connector. Which meant that as far as arcade operators were concerned, it was very easy to switch from one game to another. So you could, if you wanted to, you had a Pac-Man in your game cabinet one week, and you started to notice that people were getting a bit bored of that and, fed up of playing it, you could take that board out, and within seconds you could swap in, a newer and more interesting game for people. I don't know. I don't want to think of any examples, but that's JAMMA very much in a nutshell off the top of my head. And that's the kind of system that this is designed for. So it takes MiSTer. I don't think they've done anything particularly different on the software side or with the cores and stuff. I know they have done some modified cores and things to support specific functionality as well. Essentially what this is just taking MiSTer and packaging it up in a very nice arcade cabinet-friendly format. It's got screw holes in it. You can screw it to the inside of your cabinet, plug that connector straight in as if it was any other arcade board, and get up and running very, very quickly. So, cool project, cool product, and as you might expect from the guys at HEBA. So just heading over to their website, this is available for £258, including VAT. That's 215 ex VAT. Of course, like I say, designed here in the UK, and this includes everything integrated onto the board. I think that's very important to point out because, of course, you can get a MiSTer clone for around £100 nowadays. I think it is. If you go for the the Takyudon clone, that original DE10 educational board, which of course the MiSTer was originally built around. But you don't need that in this case, and that is important to point out when you are taking this price into account. It does have the FPGA and everything fully integrated into the board, as per the MultiSystem 2 system that they released a while back. This is a pre-order. It is expected to start shipping in August, but this isn't like a Kickstarter or anything like that. The hardware is finalized, it is finished, it is in production. So it is literally just an old school pre-order type arrangement. The HEBA MiSTer MultiSystem 2 Arcade, reads the product page, is a premium fully featured FPGA-based arcade JAMMA system that runs the MiSTer FPGA project. Unlike lockdown hardware, the MultiSystem 2 Arcade is a dynamically reconfigurable platform which can drop into your arcade cabinet and run games using original controls, CRT monitors, and is designed to be future expanded to support machine-specific features such as force feedback. Expanded capability may require support in the MiSTer core you are running. MultiSystem 2 Arcade can also run custom cores. They haven't locked this thing down. It is just a bog standard MiSTer SD card that you stick in there and can run all of those custom cores. And indeed, if you want to just plug this into your TV and plug a joystick into it and play your games that way, you can do that as well, as per a standard MiSTer system. It has an integrated audio amplifier. That's quite important if you want to use it in an arcade cabinet. And Control Dock Arcade, which is HEBA's arcade controller interface that they do sell separately. And that is all built into the board. It also has dual player I/O, analog inputs for stuff like your spinners and trackballs and wheels, and an expansion kick harness for up to 9 buttons per player. So much like the original JAMMA system, expandable and extendable beyond the kind of core system. They've got the user manual available if you want to have a look through that before you order and see what it is all about. And there is also an FAQ and a dedicated MiSTer MultiSystem website you can check out, as well as the video. And of course, I will link to all of that down below so you can have a look. This is starting to sound like a sales pitch, but it isn't. I am just quite excited about this. And like I say, when I do get back onto my arcade project, it is highly, highly likely that this is the platform that I'm going to be using. But yeah, they have put a huge amount of thought into this. So it does support CRTs and LCDs, 24-bit analog video on board, which is very important. We've got a 15-way VGA connector. It's got the 128 meg of SD RAM built in, and it's got the 1 gig of LPDDR RAM. It's got a Class D 10-watt power amplifier with a physical volume control with a 3.5mm line out and the stereo line headers, of course, as per the original JAMMA standard. It's got an integrated USB 2 hub with 4 external ports. So as mentioned, you can just plug a joystick or a keyboard or whatever into it if you want to. Or indeed the Zapparoo NFC system, which is a fantastic way of launching your MiSTer cores from NFC cards. It's got the low latency integrated control dock arcade controller interface. It's got dual player controls, analog inputs, kick harness expansion, and indeed inputs for trackball, spinners, and optical devices, and that is up to 2 players as well. Wow. So that's the list of features. That is shipping in August. This is a pre-order. The hardware is finalized. It is in production. It is ready to ship. And as soon as yours is ready to go out with its rather snazzy 3D printed case, they will ship it to you for the price of £258, including VAT. And yeah, like I say, drop-in solution, analog audio amplifier in there, analog controller interface built in. You've got the FPGA and everything built in. So it is literally all you need to shove into your arcade cabinet and start enjoying all of those games. Good stuff. Anyway, sales pitch over. Let's move on to our next bit of news. Right then, it's been a couple of weeks since I released one of these rambles due to circumstances outside of my control, as mentioned, so we do have quite a few things to catch up on. And I want to roll these next 3 stories up into one because they all concern new hardware releases that will no doubt be of interest to you lovely ramblers out there. And indeed, they are all projects that I have covered quite extensively in the past. So I did want to give all of these a bit of a shout out rather than just glossing over them. Now, the first one that I want to talk about is the Neptune, the GF1 Neptune. This is a recreation. Let me just hit play on this video so we've got something to watch. There we go. This is a recreation of a SEGA console that was actually cancelled back in the 90s. And what they did, or what SEGA was intending to do, was to get the original Mega Drive, or indeed the Genesis as it was known in America, and combine it with their 32X add-on, which was the 32-bit kind of upgrade that slotted into the top of the Mega Drive. It was never a big seller, a bit of an obscure platform with just kind of a handful of quite obscure games released for it, but would have been quite an interesting console. Although, of course, predominantly focused on 2D graphics, and things were very much moving towards 3D. Of course, there was the Atari Jaguar, perhaps the greatest of that generation of consoles, and the N64 and the PlayStation and stuff. And Sega, I think, quite rightly decided to pursue the Saturn and then later the Dreamcast rather than pouring more money into 2D consoles. And I think that's the reason why the Neptune was cancelled. But the community has taken this under their wing and recreated it as an FPGA-based thing, and you can actually pre-order one and buy it as a product now. This isn't an official endorsement or anything like that, but one of the creators, one of Games Care, Michelin Fabio, has posted some footage of this upcoming console in action. So if you're interested in the Neptune, perhaps you're on the pre-order list for it. Very cool to see this thing actually working. Of course, you can build one of these as well if you like. There is an open source PCB out there that you can actually get fabricated yourself at your favorite PCB fabricator. That was created by the Board Folk, of course, my good friends. And I have covered their project quite extensively. There's also a case that you can 3D print for it. But these people are actually releasing this Neptune as a kind of a proper project that you can purchase. So this is their unit on display here, running a Sega CD game, and of course with the Genesis, the Mega Drive, and the 32X, you could also plug it into the Sega CD as well. And indeed, the Neptune would have been pluggable, innable to the Sega CD. So great to see this working and up and running. Of course, a bit of a demo video here of their unit with an original Sega CD. Very cool to see. And also, if we click across to this other video that they have released, and this is actually running from an EverDrive flash cart, highly recommended. A wonderful, wonderful series of flash carts for all sorts of different platforms from Crix, of course, based over in Ukraine. And this is just showing the console up and running and playing some games from that flash card. Of course, that flash card also supports 32X and Sega CD games as well, if you want to go down that route and perhaps aren't lucky enough to own the original Sega CD hardware. So cool to see that progressing. And indeed, I don't know, I can't remember if I may have expressed some skepticism about this project at the time. If so, it seems that may have been ill-founded or, perhaps a little bit misguided, but good to see them succeeding and showing off some working hardware. So that's always good. Speaking of hardware, let's move on to our next story. And this is the Steam controller, which has officially released this week. I've talked quite a bit about Valve and their upcoming Steam machines. We've got the VR thingy and their new updated Steam controller. I will say, I own the original Steam controller. I actually bought it when it was first released, and I played with it for all of about, I want to say 5 minutes, but I probably persevered with it for about a week, and I don't really like it as a controller. I never really got on with the original Steam controller. Perhaps I didn't give it enough of a chance, but I went back to my Xbox 360 controller for a while for my kind of couch gaming PC games. And then I moved on to the 8-Bit Do Ultimate, which I'm still using for playing mainly Wreckfest, and of course the Heretic remaster that I mentioned earlier, which I have been playing quite a lot just lately. But anyway, the Steam controller is your bag, and I don't see why not. I just happen to not get on with it myself. There is this new version with all of its wonderful touchpads and motion controls and sticks and buttons and things all over it. And you can actually buy one. And the exciting thing about this, of course, as mentioned, is that it is kind of the first part of Steam's new, or indeed Valve's new hardware lineup. It includes the Steam machine and the VR thing that I can't remember the name of at the moment. So people are starting to get their hands on these, and the feedback is generally positive from what I've seen. And if you head over to Steam itself, you can purchase yours here in the UK for £85. I believe I heard that it was $80 in the US. It's got magnetic TMR thumbsticks. It's got 4 haptic motors for high-definition rumble, 35 plus hours of gameplay on a single charge, and it's got its own low-latency USB dongle interface called the Steam Puck, apparently. So that's quite cool. Of course, you could pair this with your Steam machine if you are going to be getting your hands on one of those, or indeed a machine running Bazzite, or of course, Steam running in big picture mode on Windows, if that is your bag. Look at this. We've got high-definition rumble. We've got grip-enabled gyro, grip sense, a new input for Steam controller that enables gyro with capacitive touch. Hold and release to enable and disable gyro aiming. That, of course, is a gyroscope, so you can, like the PlayStation. When did they introduce that in the PlayStation? Was it in the 3? I don't know. So that looks quite exciting, and indeed, you can order one of those if you like. And speaking of ordering stuff, yet another thing for us to splash our gaming cash on. An announcement a week or so ago from the new Commodore, who of course are going from strength to strength. I've reported very positively on these guys. Most recently on their new firmware policy and how they were going to be locking people out of third-party firmwares on the C64 Ultimate. They've now done a bit of a U-turn on that and seen sense and announced that they will actually allow third-party firmwares and cores and things on their FPGA-based console. But if you do break your console in the process, it won't be covered by their warranty, which I think is quite a fair approach. But the news here is that you can now get the bread bin style, not the bread bin style, the slimline Commodore. Sorry, I was just reading the page there. The bread bin's the original. So the C64C, which is the I actually really like this style of Commodore 64. It's got it's kind of the more angular later version with the flat kind of panel, the boxy back on it with the lines and things. And they are relaunching that style of C64, which seems like the next logical step in this process. all the power of the bread bin, half the loaf. Nice to see you again. That's the letter C. Good stuff. Who's writing their marketing stuff? Yeah, this is actually cast from the original 1986 Commodore factory tooling, so that's as authentic as it gets, isn't it? A sleek, creamy beige case inspired by 1986, all the same internal specs, so essentially, internally, it is the same as their other C64 Ultimate, but if you prefer the form factor of the later C64C, well, there's now an option for you, $299.99, that's a reduced price, $50 off if you pre-order now. And as at the time of writing, they are going to be dispatching from the factory in September, and that is guaranteed to be delivered before Christmas. So cool to see. Looks like they have a few different styles. As before, we've got the Starlight and the Founders editions as well. So Starlight was the transparent case with the RGB lights and things inside it. Quite a cool eye-catching option for the original C64 Ultimate. You can pre-order the new style of case in that style if you like. That's $349, which seems quite reasonable actually for the snazzy transparent case with those RGB lights. And if you want the Super Pimp Founders Edition, obviously it's just called the Founders Edition. I added the Super Pimp part. I'm not quite sure why. You can get one of those for $499.99, and that is 24 karat gold plated badge, and it is a gently white translucent case as described. So the original Ultimate Founders Edition was like a translucent gold color. This is white with gold keys, and it actually works really well. Quite like the look of this. And only 3,200 of these will ever be made, and they only have 291 left. So that's great. Underglow LEDs, gold seal, share certificate, and PVD gold keycaps on that. What a striking looking unit that is. So yeah, we've got the Neptune, coming on very nicely with that SEGA CD support in action and flashcard support, which is always great to see. We've got the Steam controllers available now to purchase, £85. And we have also got this upcoming C64C from the newly rebooted Commodore, of course being headed up by our good friend Christian, Mr. Perifractic himself. Really exciting news in the hardware world this week. Let's take a moment to talk about one of my favourite operating systems of all time. I am, of course, talking about DOS. The platform that perhaps had the biggest impact on me, actually, as a computer user over the years. Some of my earliest memories, our very first PC back in 1994, which was running MS-DOS 6.22 and Windows 3.1. And of course, back in those days, it was the platform on the PC for gaming. Windows gaming wasn't even really a thing. Windows 95 did have some exclusive games, but you were always better off dropping into DOS and running the DOS version. And it was only really 1998, of course Windows 98, that Windows kind of started to take hold as a proper gaming platform. And I think actually of all the stuff that I've covered on my channel over the years, DOS is probably the one that I have the most nostalgic love for, even more so than the Atari stuff and some of the Linux stuff and the console stuff that I've covered as well. And very, very much looking forward to getting back onto some classic PC things if I ever get this PS3 video done. But anyway, there has been some big news in the DOS world, believe it or not, in the past couple of weeks. And of course, it is my job to report it to you. So, speaking of stuff that I have covered, of course, I have covered on my channel the original IBM PC, the 5150, the XT, the 5162. I am a huge, huge fan of those machines. I think they're iconic machines, and I think they are some of the most important machines in the history of computing. You know, if it wasn't for those, that initial release of DOS, particularly in 1981 with the IBM PC, I don't think we would be where we are today in the Wintel world, for better or for worse, depending on your opinions. He says, sat here recording this in front of his brand new M5 MacBook Air. And it is that earliest release of DOS that I want to talk to you about today, because if we head over to the Microsoft website, and specifically opensource.microsoft.com, which is a bit of a bizarre concept for any of those of us who have been around for quite a while. Microsoft has released the source code and a load of other interesting stuff relating to the very first release of DOS, 86 DOS. And this is 86-DOS 1.0 from 45 years ago, believe it or not. So, the headline here is continuing the story of early DOS development. This is a story by Stacey Hafner and Scott Hanselman, of course, a legend in the Microsoft world. And the story reads, over the last few years, we've been working to open some of the earliest chapters of Microsoft's operating system history. In 2018, we re-open sourced MS-DOS 1.25 and 2.11, and more recently, in 2024, we were able to make the source for MS-DOS 4 available to the public as well. MS-DOS 4 not being one of the more fondly remembered ones. I think it was quite a buggy and ill-fated release. That's me speaking, not the article, for the sake of our audio listeners. But today, on 86-DOS 1.0's 45th anniversary, we're continuing that tradition by preserving the earliest DOS source code discovered to date. These releases are about making historically important systems software available for study, preservation, and plain old curiosity. But that work doesn't end with a GitHub repo. Software history lives in code, yes, but also in scanned listings, internal documents, assembler printouts, and the sometimes wonderfully analog artifacts of how operating systems came together in the late 1970s and early 1980s. If you read the original announcement around reopen sourcing DOS 1.25 and 2 on the Windows command line blog, you'll know how much context matters when trying to understand where today's platforms came from. So, with that in mind, I'm not going to sit here and read the rest of this because A, it's quite interesting and you should go and read it yourself, but also B, there's quite a lot of it. What they are releasing is the source code, the full source code, and that is on GitHub, so you can actually clone that repo and check it out and have a play with it yourself, perhaps even compile it if you can get the right tool chain for that setup. But also they have scanned a huge amount of historical documentation relating to that first release and the internal development documents and things relating to 86-DOS version 1, which of course was acquired by Mr. Gates himself and rebranded to MS-DOS. And the rest, as they say, is history. Of course, Microsoft were... people think that DOS was kind of the first big success for Microsoft, and it was probably their biggest early success. But of course, they were already selling various versions of MS Basic, rebranded versions of MS Basic for various different platforms as well at the time. And I think that is quite important to acknowledge. But anyway, this story is about DOS. If you are interested in the development of the very first version of DOS from 1981, you can head over to opensource.microsoft.com to their blog, which will be linked down below. You can check out all that development material, all that documentation, manuals, notes, press release, marketing stuff, and of course the source code itself. Absolutely fascinating to look at and really interesting to see Microsoft open sourcing some of their earliest history as well. Top work, I will say. And that, my dearest ramblers, brings us around rather neatly to my regular Videos of the Week feature, wherein I feature a video, or indeed videos, that have entertained, enlightened, educated, or otherwise improved my life in some small way. Sometimes they are vintage and retro computing and gaming related, sometimes they aren't, sometimes there's one video, and sometimes there is more than one video. And this week, I have 4. I actually have 4 videos for you. One is one that I have talked about previously, but I have 3 brand new ones for you. So hopefully this is a good offering for this week's Ramble and something of something by way of an apology, I guess, for missing last week. Anyway, let's jump straight into this. And my very first recommendation is kind of technology, kind of vintage. Well, very much vintage, but not really on the computer side of things. But it is a YouTuber of whom I have been a massive supporter and follower for a very long time. And hopefully you are too. But perhaps you may have missed his big comeback. Perhaps it hasn't popped up on your homepage. So I do want to kind of point this out and maybe send a bit of traffic his way. Anyway, without further ado, this is Tom Scott. That's right. One of the absolute legends of YouTube. Particularly British YouTube, one of the kind of early pioneers, makes absolutely fascinating videos about all sorts of interesting things and places and contraptions all over the world, talks to all of the people involved, and his videos have always been absolutely brilliant. But he has had a bit of a break for a few years now, but he's back. He's doing a series of interesting attractions and local legends and things around the UK. And this is a place called Peasholm Park, and basically they have this the naval battle reenactment thing with model boats on the lake in the park. And you think now, well, you might think, oh, that doesn't sound very interesting at all. And admittedly, when this video started playing, I was, I stuck with it because it was Tom Scott. But I was thinking, well, how good can it be? Because if you've been to any of these parks in the UK, these kind of these kind of radio-controlled boat things, which is what I thought this was going to be initially, they're reasonably common. You put your 20p in the slot and you control your boat for 2 minutes or whatever, and that's it. And I'm sure a lot of us will remember playing with stuff like that as a kid. But this is that, but scaled up times 1,000, I guess. This is insane. This has got pyrotechnics. It's got people inside the boats actually piloting them. This started off as a reenactment of an actual naval battle that took place. But it has now become kind of more of a bit of a generic thing. I'm just scrolling through the information here just to make sure I haven't missed anything. But and Tom does actually get inside and pilot some of these boats. These are hand-built. They are very, very old. They are very rickety, and they are maintained by council employees who actually need to be trained up to maintain these and operate these things and run this battle. There's a narrator, there's fireworks, there's explosives that have to be loaded and charged on all of the boats. There are trailing cables that run through the lake that fires all of this stuff and synchronizes it all. You've got planes flying overhead, dropping bombs. You've got a very clever system that makes one of the boats kind of semi-capsize as part of the battle. It's a really, really interesting feat of engineering. Very rickety, very much hand-built, and I love stuff like this. And Tom is making a whole series of videos of stuff like this all over the UK. So this is great to see. It's hello from inside a tiny boat. And also he finds himself trapped in what he describes as a floating coffin, which is full of moths at one point, which, to be fair, I think would be one of my absolute worst nightmares. I hate moths with a passion. They terrify me, quite frankly. I don't know why, because I quite like butterflies. But it's something about moths. I don't know. It's that weird powder that they have all over them. Anyway. So hello from inside a tiny boat. Tom Scott, that is 23 minutes and 58 seconds. And I think his new videos, I think it's fair to say, and I think by his own admission, are perhaps a bit less produced than his classic series. But still very well filmed and still, absolutely fascinating. And to see him kind of talking to the people involved and the passion of these people involved in running these things as well. So very much enjoyed that video. Watched it on my TV. I loved it. It's Tom Scott. It's an easy recommendation to make. Anyway, the next one is Matt KC, and I've recommended this channel a few times in the past. Always a big fan of his work. He's the Lego Island guy. Has covered that game quite a lot. He's been involved in the whole campaign to kind of bring that back and preserve it, reverse engineer it. That's the phrase I was looking for. And he has been on an ongoing quest for his dream monitor for a few years now. This is the 3x2 display, which is what's the resolution? Oh, there we go. Perfect timing. The resolution 4500 by 3000. So it's a 4.5K monitor. And this is the display used in the Microsoft Surface Studio, which is an all-in-one computer. And the monitor itself hasn't been available separately up to this point. So he had a go at building his own. And I think I made that one of my videos a week quite a long time ago when he actually built that project. That blew up. He replaced the controller board and couldn't get the thing up and running and basically gave up on the whole thing. But then he was contacted by a retailer in the US who have actually started selling a Chinese-produced, like a proper commercial product that uses this same panel. So he's testing it in this video and putting it through his paces. But I think the interesting thing about this is just how he talks about his DIY project and his attempt to kind of build this thing, how this new commercial take on it differs from his. And also this monitor, I mean, it's 3:2 aspect ratio, which is really interesting in its own right. It's a very, very high resolution. It's a very high quality monitor. And I just thought it was quite interesting to see, really. Interesting to see something unusual in the monitor world. It's a review video, but hey, if you have been interested in getting your hands on one of these Surface Studio monitors, this is now available as a commercial product, and this is his review and his link to it. It is 14 minutes and 20 seconds long. I always enjoy his videos, so that's Matt KC. Someone built my dream computer monitor. Moving on, my third video of the week is this one. This was posted on my Discord server. This is a band called Master Boot Record, which I have come across in the past. And this is actually a live concert that they did at Super Magfest 2025. There is a Doom connection here. Shout out to the Doom Shrine behind me, my collection of Doom-related releases and paraphernalia. as I bet you thought I'd forgotten about that, because they cover the music from E1M1, the first level of Doom, that iconic music. And they do a rather good job of it as well as playing some of their own original songs as well, all kind of vintage computer themed and inspired, and some covers of some other bits of game music and stuff. So super, super nerdy. Live music is always good, always goes down well with me, particularly this kind of more metal themed stuff. It's an hour long. Stick it on in the background while you're cleaning the house or whatever. It's very good. They're very good at what they do. So that's MiSTer Boot Record live at Super Magfest 2025. Thank you to the person who shared that on my Discord. I don't have your name available, unfortunately, although you will inevitably be read out in a moment. And finally, I talked about this last time, but I mentioned that I hadn't had a chance to watch it properly. So this is the Wild Gunman restoration project, or kind of remaster project from 74XX Arcade Repair. I'd kind of skimmed through this and kind of picked up a few of the key details and recommended that people go and watch it because it's a really cool project to try and bring back an incredibly rare and important Nintendo arcade game from the 70s. I've actually sat and watched this properly now, and this needs more eyeballs. I mean, I know it's had 121,000 views as at the time of recording, which is very well deserved, but it's such a well-produced video. It's so well put together. I mean, this channel does arcade repair and restoration stuff, and, you know, I'm not saying his other videos aren't good. I have gone and watched a few of them, but this is peak YouTube, and it's got comments from people like Techmoan and Jeff Geerling and Rerez, and, you know, supportive comments from some really big names in the kind of computing and gaming YouTube world, and deservedly so, because it is such a well-made video, and the end result as well, the end product that he has produced as a result of this process, and just the technical information on how it originally worked and how he's kind of tried to recreate the experience, if not the original hardware. This video takes some beating. This is, I think it's fair to say, this is one of the best videos I have ever watched on YouTube. I've been watching YouTube since 2008, whenever it first launched. It is that good. So I just wanted to rave about it a bit more and point it out again for anyone who hasn't watched it. I don't think you even need to be interested in arcade history or Nintendo or anything like that. It's just a great video. So Wild Gunman, resurrecting Nintendo's first coin-op on its 50th anniversary from 74XX Arcade Repair. It's 20 minutes and 52 seconds long. That time will absolutely fly by if you sit and watch this video, I guarantee. This is one for the big telly. Sit down with a cup of tea and some biscuits and give it a proper watch, because it is great. It is great. A good selection of videos this week. We've got Tom Scott floating around in tiny little boats. We've got Matt KC reviewing his Dream monitor, that weird 3x2 Surface Pro Studio, whatever it is, monitor. We've got a live set from MiSTer Boot Record, vintage computing inspired covers, and of course their own original music as well. And finally, again, that Wild Gunman video, which I gave a bit of a shout out to the other week. But if you only watch one video on YouTube this week, make it that one. Although I guess, actually, you're watching this one at the moment, aren't you? So if you only watch 2 videos on YouTube, make it that one. So that is that for this week's Ramble. I just wanted to give one final very brief shout out, because this has been quite a long one. That's what she said. To this release on this new release on the Atari ST. This is a take on Wonder Boy, one of my favourite game series of all time. And this is basically a homebrew game, which is very, very heavily inspired by that, called Miracle Boy, and it has been released on the Atari ST. Of course, Atari ST, one of my favourite platforms of all time, one of my favourite game series of all time. Homebrew gaming, it's the perfect storm for me. Also, this is on timeextension.com, and they always get a shout out every week, don't they? Anyway, Samsoft's Wonder Boy-inspired Miracle Boy in Dragonland is now available to download for €15. Described by the modern-day version of Zap as a true masterpiece, this homebrew ST title is heavily influenced by Wonder Boy in Monster World, or Wonder Boy 5 Monster World 3, which originally launched on the Mega Drive/Genesis in 1991. Is that right? I thought it was on the Master System. I played it on the Master System. Perhaps it was originally released on the Mega Drive. I don't know. Anyway, travel the expanses of Miracle Land, solve puzzles, play minigames, improve your equipment, and meet colourful characters, says the game's download page. This is what awaits you before freeing the kingdom from the clutches of Count Drago in this 100% retro game. Will you be the miracle boy you've been waiting for? As you can see from the screenshots, very, very reminiscent of that series indeed. In fact, I would say that it's maybe a clone of that. Is that a kind thing to say, a polite thing to say in this day and age? I mean, you know, I don't think producing a clone of one of the greatest games of all time is anything to be sniffed at. Of course, it is. You know, a huge amount of work has gone into this. And there was an official remaster of this original Wonder Boy game, wasn't there? Wonder Boy 3, a few years back on the PC, where you could, I think it was released on the console at the time as well, where you could actually switch between the original graphics and stuff. And I played through that and very much enjoyed that. I think that was a lockdown game actually. I think that was around 2020. I played that. So. Anyway, if you have an Atari ST, you want to support a homebrew developer and, play, you're a fan of this kind of genre of game, these kind of big epic RPG adventure type games, I can highly recommend it. It looks great. So that's Miracle Boy on the Atari ST. Anyway, that really is it for now. So thank you ever so much for joining me for this week's Ramble. I will try not to get derailed yet again. I have a lot of thanks to read out to my supporters, my Patreon people, my Discord members. And if you want to join them over on the Discord, you don't need to be a Patreon supporter. It is completely free and open, so you can follow the link down in the description to join us. All sorts of great discussion over there about... actually, we're talking about the local elections at the minute, so perhaps we'll gloss over that. But, other gaming-related stuff as well. We've got Life-Size Teddy Bear, who is now apparently known as L. I missed that particular rebrand, but shout out to L. Technic, Steve's Tech Shed, Naoki, Rob Crowther, Garrow, Analog Sheep, Sozzled, Katrina, DBK, Koshiak, and my good friend Manemo as well, who apparently very much enjoyed his trip to the UK, managed to get here and get back safely to Germany. And I know that you'll be listening in your car. So, big shout out to you. Again, as always, that's all I have for you for this week's Ramble. I hope you've enjoyed it. Look out for my upcoming PS3 video on my main channel, ctrl-alt-rees, at some point. You can go back and watch my Geekom mini PC review if you want to watch that. I wouldn't recommend it. I've done far better videos over the years. And that's all I have for you. This goes out on the podcast platforms, of course. It goes out on my second YouTube channel, youtube.com/Rees Rambles, and that is at 2 minutes to midnight every Friday UK time. So hopefully I'll see you same time and place again next week. Do check out the description down below or the show notes on your podcast platform if you want to know anything more about any of the stuff that I've featured in this week's Ramble, or indeed if you want to watch any of my videos of the week for this week. That's that. You know what's left to say? Bye.